We're good.
I call this meeting of the Township of North Huron to order. 1.1 Township of North Huron, June 12, 2020, a media release, a COVID-19 update. I'm not sure if all the council had a chance to read that, but we've been moving along. And that has been published. There's been quite a few things on the go and we've been working on it. Is there any questions? Not hearing any. Confirmation of the agenda of the Council of the Township of North Huron accept the agenda for June 15th, 2020 council meeting as presented. Trevor, do I have a mover?
Chris. Rick, second.
Okay, Chris and Rick. And Carson, I'll hand it over to you for the call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron accept the agenda for the June 15th, 2020 council meeting as presented. So this will be a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeves-Sype.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer. Councillor Heffer, you're muted right now. Councillor Heffer, you're still muted. Councillor Van Hitterson. Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Hearing none, we'll move along. 4, public comments. Opportunity for any member of the public to speak to an item of business is on the agenda. You have 2 minutes apiece, a person. So if you want to speak up, or Carson will notice if you want to. Again, not hearing any, we will continue to move on. Consent agenda that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.1.1 and further that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.3. Do I have a mover? I have Paul, seconder.
I'll second that, Kevin.
Kevin seconds. Any questions or comments on that? Anything in that agenda before we move on? Anybody like to pull anything out? Not hearing of anybody. We're going to have Carson take it up for a roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent item 5.1.1 and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.3 for information. So Councillor Falconer. Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson. Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
Deputy Reeves-Sype.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. 6.1 is a delegation. Paul Seebach of Seebach and Company, presentation of the 2019 audited financial statements. And I hope I said your last name properly, sir.
Correct.
Thank you kindly. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present the information. There's kind of 2 parts to our report. One is the financial statements themselves. It's quite a few pages there, etc. And our summary that we've made. And it has a little more breakdown and a 5-year average. So a few of the highlights, most of the things are positive. When you look at our statements, it shows a surplus of 2.6 million. And if you recall in April when Donna transferred $27,000 to the tax stabilization reserve. So you might wonder what the difference is, but the largest difference is during the year you transferred almost $2.3 million into reserves. In our reports, because we have to present them according to the ministry accounting standards, don't show reserve transfers. So that's the biggest thing there is while our report does show 2.6 million, by the time you make the accounting adjustments, And the biggest thing, the reserve fund transfers of 2.3 million, you come back to your 27,000, what was transferred to the tax stabilization reserve. During the year, you spent $3.3 million in capital. You budgeted 4.2 million. One of the reasons you were able to transfer money into reserves were some of the projects weren't completed, like Carling Terrace. Some other projects at the community center weren't completed and they were transferred into reserves. Also in the year, you sold the Blythe Fire Hall, the ESTC building, and you also paid off a loan that was associated with that. You received $3.5 million for that. When we show that on our statement, it shows a $1.9 million gain, book value gain, because of the value of that building had depreciated to 1.5 million. I've talked about the reserves. Reserves, when you look at, we go through those, they're up $2.3 million to 14.3. Like I said, some were planned, some were grants you received that were just put into reserves. Deferred, there's something called deferred grants that are up. That's your federal gas tax money. You received 300 and something thousand, you only spent 30 of it, so about 290 was put into deferred revenue, just be spent on this year. But one thing, when I say, when you look at your reserves, 14.3 million, about 8 million of those are associated with water and sewer department. The last good news is at the end of the year, your debt was $676,000. During the year, you made your regular debt payments, and you also paid off the ESTC loan. And so during the year, you did capital projects, but you did not take on any new debt. So the first thing I would look at is our report to council. It shows the pages which says financial indicators. That's kind of like your balance sheet. So the main thing to get out of this is about halfway down, net financial assets. That's the difference between your cash and things you owe, your current assets and current liabilities. It's $15.9 million. So it's up $3.2 million. So most of that is because you've got more money in the bank because you increased your reserves, and also because you paid down your debt. So you can see from 2015, you're at 9.8 million, and it's slowly been going up to this year. So that just shows that you're in a better financial position. So quickly going through things, cash, 16 million, 9 million of that is associated with the municipality. The other 7.2 million are with water and sewer. Taxes receivable, 436. Down below, we show your taxes are probably at their best spot. They have been for years. They're only 3.4%. You can tell they have been as high as 4.2, 4.5. So they have done a good job collecting outstanding taxes. As a percentage of overall, it had been as high as 7.7, now 4.6. So that's positive. That means you end up having more money in the bank and less in receivables. Long-term receivables, that's just your tile drain loans. They're in and out. And then your long-term investment, that's the cost of your shares in West Area. So your total current assets are $19.5 million. So then things you owed at the end of the year, accounts payable, 1.8 million. It's higher from last year, but there's quite a few outstanding invoices from your new Public Works Fire Hall in Blythe, 680,000. So that's why that number's higher. Deferred revenue, that's the money. Most of that is the unspent federal gas tax grant. And there's a schedule to show that. So that's just money you can spend next year. The landfill closure, that's kind of an accounting term. It didn't change too much. The municipal debt, 701,000, but 24,000 of that are tile drain loans. There's a schedule for that too. So then you come back to that number. I said 15.9 million net financial assets. That's important because that's basically what you have to work with. And then there's the tangible capital assets. Those are your buildings, machinery, equipment, etc. So you can see you've added $3.3 million, which I spoke on. The disposals, that's on book value, so that's just taking out the book value mostly of the older Blythe fire hall. That's not what you receive for it, but that's the book value coming out. And at the bottom, accumulated surpluses shows reserves 14.3 million, which are up the 2.3 million for last year. Flipping that page, it comes to the financial statement. And we tried to do this, break it down in a little more detail than what would be shown on our audited financial statements. So it starts with taxation, 6 million. Your own grant, you've been lucky. It's gone down, but not dramatically compared to some places. The gas tax, we've talked about that. You took in 308,000, but you only spent 34, so you're saving that for this year. The modernization funding, 532,000, that all went to a reserve. That's why your reserves are up. That's why you have more money in the bank. And then some other grants, not a whole lot. The community infrastructure improvement grant, some of that went into income to pay for some of the road work you did, a lot of that, but some of that also went to reserves. So you go down, there's a lot of things that you didn't do ended up in reserves. User fees are mostly in line. And then other income, you get down to gain on disposition of capital assets. So that $1.9 million, most of that is the gain, the book value gain on the sale of the old Blythe fire hall. The total revenue is 16.6 million. Expenditures, fire's a little higher. You had to pay some rental. You didn't have the building ready, so it was about 47,000 in rental payments there. That's why the 628 is higher. Policing, it's higher from last year. You all know there was some closure costs associated to disbanding the police force. And then you come back down below. So the total expenditures, 17.3 million, and that includes the $2.2 million of reserve transfers and also the $3.3 million of capital. Our statements don't show the capital as an expense in reserve transfers. And then we have to add those back on, and you come back to the number on our statement, 14 million, and a gain of 2.6 million. Going to the financial statements, our sheet kind of summarizes everything, but just quickly going to the actual financial statements, there's an auditor's report. The main thing there were your auditors. This is the report attached to the financial statements showing that everything's approved. So the most important paragraph says, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly and all material respects to financial position of the municipality in accordance with Canadian public accounting standards. So that's the main part of the audit. It's a clean audit report. There's no qualifications or anything. So that's saying everything was found okay. Schedules I might look at on page 5 of the notes. There's note number 8 is municipal debt. And so that shows the debt that the municipalities had, probably the least debt it's had in years. Just going through the loans, the 551,000, that's a combined loan you took out to pay for a grader and you took for the fire department. There's another loan of 51,000 that was for prior year road projects. Then you see the loan that's been paid off. It was 901,000 that had to do with the STC building that was paid off. And then there's another loan. A couple of years ago, you got some funding to improve things at the community center with a rink grant, and you borrowed money for that, and that's down to 73,000. And then the tile drain loans, that's also receivable. So your total debt is 701,000. When Donna prepares her FIR, it has a schedule that talks about debt. So you're allowed to borrow up to 25% of the revenue, which is or have payments come out of 2.7 million. So your payments for 2020 really are only 164,000. So you're just at 6% of your debt repayment limit. So that's very good. Other schedules further down, there's a schedule on continuity of reserves, reserve funds. So that's what shows your reserve funds, how they've changed from 12 million to 14 point, almost 14.3. And as I said, there's almost $8 million associated with environmental service. Basically, that's water and sewer things. Then deferred revenue, I've spoken a bit about the federal tax funds. So you started out with 383, you didn't spend that. You got interest on it of 11,000. That has to be kept in a separate bank account. You took in 308,000, spent 34. So at the end of the year, you had 669,000 to actually spend on this year's projects for the mostly road projects. The other two statements included are the BIA. The first one is the Wingham BIA. What they were doing last year were kind of putting money away. They wanted 2020. They want to buy an LED sign. So when you look at their statements, they have $34,000 in the bank. They've increased the reserve for future projects by $6,500 to $18,000. And when you look at their actual statement, you'll see that they have a surplus of $10,000, and they allocated $6,500 of that to the reserve fund, which was assumed to pay for the sign for this year. So that's the Wingham BIA. The Blythe BIA, if you recall, 2 years ago in 2018, they had a lot of activity. They had received a regional tourism organization grant, $10,000, and they had a large hometown holiday weekend promotion. So last year, in 2018, there was a little bit more activity. This year, not as much. So they ended up with a surplus of $4,702. I think in closing, what I would say is at the end of the year, the municipality was in a stronger financial position because you had a small operating surplus and projects that weren't completed. You received some grants that you didn't spend. They're all put into reserves. And where that helps is like this year, in your budget, you have $3.7 million, and you're going to do most of that work with only borrowing $400,000. So that left you in a good position. Years ago, I know, when you did your capital budget, you had to borrow for more items. This year and the last few years, you don't. So that shows you're in a better position. One thing about our audit this year, we got most of the field work done before COVID came. We were done before February 12th. Most of our stuff was done in February. But we did have to do a lot of work to complete it. So we do thank Donna. We had to communicate a lot with her online, through telephone, and get all the schedules done. So we do thank Donna for that. And I should congratulate Donna. I'm not supposed to congratulate people. I'm supposed to just tell you facts. But she was able to complete her FIR by the end of May and had it filed. And there weren't many municipalities that actually did that. So she had it filed by the deadline. So good for her. Any questions on any of the reports?
Before we throw it out to questions, I just want to say to the council, great work. We don't always get opportunity like this, but that was a great year. I want to say to the staff, especially the senior staff, all staff, but especially senior staff, great work. Thank you very kindly. And I know I speak for every one of my councilors when I say that. Now I'll throw it out to council. Any questions or comments, concerns? Donna, you're getting off easy tonight. Not hearing any.
Read, Billy.
Yes, go ahead, Trevor.
Just Trevor. Just a more of a question. I think I've asked this question before, but I just want to take into consideration. How do we account for our assets like the gravel pit? So that's an asset. Do we only how is that accounted for in the financial statements? If somebody could answer that question. I think I ask this question every year and I forget to write it down.
I just forget.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. So we actually don't make an entry on that. It is an inventory item, and we record it as we use it. So as we pull gravel out, we expense it in that year. But we don't actually have like a value on the gravel pit itself. I don't know if you want to add to that, Paul, but we don't have an inventory for a value of the pit.
No, Don is correct. The accounting guidelines tell you to set up certain things, certain assets, but items such as gravel pits and that, there's no guidelines. So basically, as you use it, you're given credit for it. But to be honest, when you look at the statements, there's no value assigned to the if you were to take the tonnage, time of price, that's not in the statements.
That's correct.
And is that consistent, Paul and Donna? Would that be consistent with other municipalities? Would that be consistent?
The only time it may not be is if you went out and bought one today, bought a gravel pit today, it might show up, but it's not costed for owning it in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Did I see, Rick, did you have your hand up? I'm going to say no. Okay, not hearing any. Thank you very much, Paul. We do appreciate that report. You keep yourself safe as we move along in life.
Okay, thank you very much. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't believe I need a mover or seconder for a public meeting, so, or delegation. We're going to go down to 7.1.1, Site Plan Agreement for Rutledge Holding Limited. Do I have a mover?
Your worship, if I can just jump in here for a sec. So Monica's been communicating back and forth with me. She's still at the Central Huron meeting. She should be joining us very soon, but this is her report and she has a presentation associated with it. So I wonder whether we just want to jump to 7.1.2 and then come back to this one when she joins the meeting.
That sounds like a Marvy idea then. Let's go to 7.1.2, temporary extension of outdoor patio spaces. Do I have a mover?
I'll move that.
I'll second that. I'll
Who
second
seconded
it.
it? Kevin?
Yep.
Kevin seconds. Okay, questions or comments about this one? Concerns? None tonight? Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Carson to take the roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the clerk dated June 15, 2020 regarding the temporary extension of outdoor patio spaces during COVID-19 for information, and further, that the clerk or designate is delegated authority to issue letters of non-objection on behalf of the township when temporary extensions of outdoor patio spaces and temporary liquor license extensions applications meet all current municipal standards or bylaws. And further, that the authority delegated to the clerk or designate expires on January 1st, 2021. So Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson? Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeveside?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. 7.2 is the 7.2.1 is the audited finance statement. And again, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder for that.
Deputy Reeve will move it.
And Paul seconds. And I'm going to hand it over to Carson. Is there any questions or comments on that? I just lost myself there for a second. Not hearing any. I'm going to hand it over to Carson again.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the 2019 audited financial statements for the Township of North Huron, Wingham BIA, and Blythe BIA as presented by Seaback and Company at the June 15, 2020 regular council meeting. Councillor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeveside?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heifer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We're going to go to Recreation Community Services, 7.3.1. Do I have a mover? And seconder? Do I have a seconder for that?
Move the.
Anita seconds it. Anita seconds. So I'm going to get Vicky to speak. Oh, no. Yeah, I want to get Vicky to speak to this one first, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Before you this evening is a report regarding the provision of a summer day camp program in July and August of this year. As everyone's aware, in March, the province closed all non-essential workplaces, businesses, services, which included recreation services due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And now that the statistics have begun to show a lower daily transmission rate, of the people contracting or not contracting the illness, I guess you could say, the province has begun to open up or reopen the non-essential businesses and workplaces and basically loosen their restrictions that they had put in place. In doing this, they're doing it in a staged approach using 3 stages. Recently, they announced that they will stage 2 in which they will allow the provision of day camp services or programs, provided specific restrictions, protocols, and procedures are in place, and have, in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, those restrictions have been developed and forwarded to the municipality. These restrictions include operating at a reduced capacity, no group activities, children must be separated into different age cohorts of 10 or less, including the leaders, restricting access to the facility, screening of children and their parents on a daily basis, including taking their temperatures and maintaining health files on them, implementing hand washing protocols, frequent cleaning, disinfection of program supplies, equipment, tables, chairs, washrooms, as well as the frequently touched areas. After reviewing these restrictions, staff have determined that the overall program would have to be restructured and additional staff would be required in order to offer the program for the summer and to do the disinfection, the cleaning, and the screening, as well as to be able to maintain the participant to leader ratio that is in place. All of these things combined together, it's been determined that there would be an additional cost for the program. This additional cost is estimated to be $13,440 for the season. Prior to making this recommendation, staff did discuss it with the Emergency Operations Committee, and the committee seems to support the recommendation to council this evening, which is to cancel the day camp program for 2020. Typically, the summer day camp program is run on a cost recovery basis. Should council decide that the program is going to be offered, council needs to be aware that there would be an additional unplanned cost of that $13,440, which would need to be funded from taxation. As it sits right now, staff are recommending that the program be canceled.
Thank you very much, Vicki. We have a mover and a seconder for the motion. Is there any questions or comments or concerns? Just please speak up because, again, I can only see a few of you. Not hearing any, I'm going to hand it over to Carson for roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report prepared by the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated June 15, 2020 regarding summer day camp programs during the COVID-19 pandemic for information purposes. And further, that Council agrees with the staff recommendation to cancel summer day camp programs for the 2020 season, And further, that council directs staff to provide notice that the summer day camp programs for the 2020 season have been canceled. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor Palmer,
Yeah. It's too bad, but. yeah.
Councillor McBurney, Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer, Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson,
Yes.
Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 7-0.
Thank you kindly. From there, we're going to move on to public.
If I can just jump back in here again, Your Worship, Monica has joined us on the call now. If we want to go back to her agenda item.
That was 7.1.1, I believe. So 7.1.1, it's the plan agreement for the Rutledge Holdings Limited. Do I have a mover?
Make that motion.
I'll move that.
Okay, I've got, I think it was Kevin and Anita were first, so first and second. And we're gonna let Monica talk to this now. Hi, Monica, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reeve. My apologies for joining you about half hour later than I hoped to. Carson's just bringing up my presentation here. So this is an application for site plan approval that will be instituted with an agreement. The owner of the property is Rutling Holdings Limited, and this is block 19 in the new plan of subdivision in Blythe that Mr. Rutling Holding Limited has. The address is 682 Gloria Street, and it's a 4-unit townhouse style development. So it would be units 1 through 4. Next slide. So the proposal, as I mentioned, is for a multiple attached dwelling, 4 units on block 19. The zoning is R2-17, which is the medium density residential zone. The special zone there is just to recognize the depth of the lots. It's designated residential in the North Huron official plan. The lots front on Gloria Street. The submitted drawings have been reviewed by the municipality's township's engineer. Huron County Public Works has seen it, planning department, and North Huron staff. The next slide. So this is just an outline of the subject property within the existing plan of subdivision. This photo was taken back in 2015, so the area here looks a lot different nowadays, but you can see the location of the proposed development outlined in blue on this slide. And I believe my last slide just is probably going to be hard for you to pick out a lot of the detail on here, but Gloria Street is at the top of this drawing. And this is the site plan drawing that will show the existing or the proposed entrances and porches for the development. So this is what they will adhere to for their building plans that with the agreement to go along with it. So this application has been reviewed by the planning department with a look to compliance of the zoning bylaw and has been reviewed by staff. And all township staff were satisfied, all agencies have no objections. And in my review, I found it to be in compliance with the zoning bylaw. So it would be my recommendation that the township enter into an agreement with the owner of the property to develop the 4 units in accordance with this drawing.
Thank you, Monica. I'm going to hand it out to council now. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'm going to hand it over to Carson to do roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the Rutling Holdings Limited proposed development as it applies to 682 Gloria Street Units 1 to 4, Blythe, Township of North Huron, Block 19, Rutledge Subdivision, Registered Plan Number 22M-13. And further, that council deems the adoption of Bylaw Number 42-2020 to be time sensitive and approves an exception to Section 19.1 of the Procedure Bylaw, allowing for Bylaw Number 42-2020 to be adopted at the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sipe?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
That was Councillor Falconer, sorry.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
Councillor Palmer?
Oh, yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 7-0.
I believe we need the information on the numbers now for a second vote on this one.
Through you, your worship, not for a site plan application.
Okie dokie. Easy night. Thank you, Monica.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Reeve, would you like me to stick around, or perhaps you've already discussed the delegation of powers to staff to approve patio expansions? Did you want me to stick around for that?
We have done that one. And it passed, so you're aware. Okay?
Wonderful. Have a great night,
Very
everyone.
kindly. You too.
Yep.
Go back to 7.4.1 now. And this is the Cronin Street pedestrian crosswalk. Do I have a mover? Paul, I have a seconder. Rick seconds. I'm going to hand this over to Sean. Are you with us tonight, Sean?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So as council may recall, at the December 16th, 2019 regular meeting, I made a presentation regarding traffic study data surrounding Carling Terrace and John, as well as Carling Terrace and Victoria. Now, at that same meeting, there was a delegation showed up, an operator of a private daycare facility, and at that time she expressed some concerns surrounding the crosswalk at Cornyn and Carling Terrace. As a result of the discussions that followed that, Resolution 55619 was carried, and specifically that said that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to conduct research and provide a recommendation for Council's consideration the best remedy to address the traffic issues occurring at the Cornyn Street and Carling Terrace intersection. Now, in addition to that delegation the Council heard, staff also received a letter from Sacred Heart School, from the principal of Sacred Heart School, expressing concerns surrounding that intersection as well. Ordinarily, well, in this particular case, the option that's in front of council is a recommendation from staff to put 2 solar-powered crosswalk or crossing beacons, as well as all the appropriate stop bars and line painting to create a very formal manually operated crosswalk at that intersection. Ordinarily, before you would see this, you would get a traffic study. Unfortunately, based on the timing is just not working in our favor, you would never do a traffic study. If you want good representative data, you're not going to do it in January and February because people just aren't walking. And as everybody's aware, the schools were shut down in March, so we really did not have any opportunity to do an appropriate study. So the recommendation in front of council tonight is based primarily on the delegation that we heard, the request by the school, as well as I guess we'll call it observational information surrounding that intersection. I mean, anybody who knows Wingham understands that that is a fairly busy street. And I think the only thing slowing traffic down at the time was the rough conditions. Given the fact that we're putting new road down, I'm not sure we even have that as a deterrent anymore. So I wanted to stress the fact that this is not based on the traffic study. Council does have an option here. You can either go ahead with the installation while the road's torn up. It makes for a cleaner construction at a cost of $29,500. Or alternatively, you can order a traffic study, which I think would realistically have to happen once we're back in that pre-COVID environment. So we need the good weather, you need the schools back in, and then we would bring an engineer in to do the study. You could find that the data doesn't support this, but again, based on the input that staff has received and the delegation that we all heard, the recommendation before council tonight is to proceed with it at a cost of $29,500. As everybody's aware, this is not a budgeted expenditure. It just happens to fit well with the Cornyn and Carling Terrace intersection construction work. Now, when you look at the project, the Carling Terrace project, there is approximately $65,000 in contingency there. However, the report before council tonight does not recommend that we commit the $29,500 and plan to fund it through that, because it's a big project. We've already encountered a number of, not a tremendous amount of contingency work's been done thus far, but we've got a few months to go on the project. We've had to replace a few valves that weren't anticipated. They simply broke because of their age and condition. There's been some aggregate concerns that had to be dealt with through contingency. So although we haven't really delved into it too deep, the recommendation would be, if you're going to proceed, we have $407,210 in public works reserves. Suggest that the $29,500 be drawn from there. And then at the end of the project, if there is remaining contingency, obviously, I would say that would be the best source. Use up that contingency, offset any shortfall from the public works reserve. And then the one last piece I would point out or suggest is that even if you proceed and put the crosswalk in, it's probably a good idea to get a traffic study done once conditions stabilize anyways, just so you have a good understanding of what's going on at that intersection. And I say that because you don't want to just go on the supposition that throwing a crosswalk in there is going to be adequate. The traffic studies will probably or could very well support that. But you may find that the volume of pedestrian vehicular traffic warrants future considerations up to and including additional crossing guard. So I think regardless of what direction you take, there is value in the future in doing that study, just so that you can really close the loop on that intersection. So if there's any questions.
Yeah, let's throw it out to council. Questions, just speak up. Go ahead, Chris.
Through you, Reeve. Sean, this is just, I'm curious. This is about regarding the solar panel. I'm not sure what the tree canopy is like there. Is that going to be an issue? And the other part of that is, how about the winter gray skies? Does that cause issues?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe the site is adequate, and I had questioned the solar panel recommendation as well. They're being used all over the place. From what I understand, they're very reliable.
Thank you, Sean. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, through you, Sean. I hope it's not Huron County putting up your crosswalk, because it might not get done in the next 2 years.
Oops.
No, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship. If approved, this would be done by Omega Contracting, and it would just be incorporated into the work that's going on as we speak.
Go ahead, Paul.
Through you, Reeve. Yeah, Sean, I think this is a great fit to do it now. Super.
Absolutely. It's all tore up anyway. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, Trevor.
Comment. Don't have a traffic study. I know the OPP that has been a voice of concern. There has been a number of from the same delegations that came to council, requests for the OPP to do a scheduled watch of that particular intersection, just to keep an eye on what's going on. There has not been anything to the Police Services Board or as it relates to any recommendations at that corner. and they're doing their inspection or their revision to vehicular traffic during that and not following, road signs and that type of stuff. So I tend to agree with Councillor Heffer that the road's dug up now. We have some concerns. We have crosswalks and stuff available to us up by. I'm not sure why we would treat Sacred Heart School as any different than the public school that we have. We have crosswalks, maybe not the ones that have solar panels on them, but they have physical crosswalks where they have actual now. This one just wouldn't have a crossing guard at this particular point. But in order to have the crosswalk, the lights will help start people to understand that is a school crossing zone, and not just you students will cross when I'm not there. You have to stop. So I think in my mind, it's a great fit. It's a good idea. The traffic study, I'm just not sure. Even if the traffic study said after the fact that the traffic isn't warranted there, I'm not sure we would take it away after you've spent the $29,000. I guess my concern only is if we're going to spend, I don't know what a traffic study is, but if we're spending money on a traffic study to warrant putting a crossing guard there, I don't know that the payback of getting that traffic study would warrant adding another crossing guard. I don't know whether the cost benefit reaction would be. So my concern is if the cost of the traffic study isn't significant, and maybe back up to the crossing guard discussion if the actual lights don't work or lights aren't the major deterrent, we're still going to have OPPs required to do that. Their part of it, and I'm just not sure a traffic study is going to for council to decide whether we get another traffic study. But if we're already going to spend it on the crosswalk, I think it's warranted whether we need the traffic study or not.
Yes, Reeve Bailey, may I add through Carson a question? So I think that we should add a line to the motion just to say that if council proceeds with this project, that the budget be amended to reflect this change, and that the project be funded from reserves and/or contingency. So I believe that one line should be added on to the motion if council's in favor of proceeding.
Carson will rewrite that, and will a mover and seconder agree to that? And Paul, you're okay with it? And I think who was the seconder?
Through your worship, Rick was the seconder.
Rick, you're okay with that too, Rick?
With that, yes.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
I will hand it over to Carson to read the new motion and do the roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Public Works dated June 15th, 2020 regarding the construction of a pedestrian crosswalk at the intersection of Cornin Street and Carling Terrace for information. And further, that the construction of the crosswalk, estimated at $29,500 plus applicable taxes, be incorporated into the Carling Terrace road reconstruction budget. And further, that the project be funded through reserves, and that the 2020 budget be amended to include this project.
Good, Donna?
Yes, thank you.
So that would be a recorded vote. So
Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
Just before we get that, I just want to make sure that that motion has no bearing on study discussion that Sean had mentioned. That would come back in another vote or another thing later on. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, Carson.
through your worship, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
So this will be a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Syke.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson. Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. 7.5, Fire Department, there is no report. 7.6, Building Department, sign bylaw exemption request. Do I have a mover? I have Paul moving. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have Rick seconding it. And I'm going to hand this one over. Oh, are you with us? Kirk? I believe that goes to Kirk. Are you with us, Kirk?
I am. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, thank you. Do you mind speaking to this?
Certainly. Thank you, Reeve Billy. Good evening, members of council. As indicated in my report, we received an application for 2 billboard sign permits. The signs are proposed to be at 39377 Amberley Road, south side of Highway 86. So in reviewing the sign bylaw, the current sign bylaw does not allow billboard signs in an agricultural zoned parcel of land. I've provided council an excerpt from the sign bylaw, which is number 9 for signs in agricultural zones. Really, it only allows for a nameplate on a farm, besides any home occupation or home industry businesses that are taking place on that property. And section 4EE of the sign bylaw states exemptions to the bylaw will be allowed only upon the resolution of council. So Chris from Top Outdoor Signs has reached out already to the manager of public works for the County of Huron. They've commented back. They have no concerns, no permits required from the county, but they do have to adhere to certain setback distances from the center of the highway, which the county has provided to Chris. They have also provided engineered drawings for the 2 billboard signs, which will deal with structural as well as anchorage. So I feel if you drive around in the area, there are already a lot of billboard signs in an agricultural zone. So I really don't have any concerns with the proposal. However, we do need the exemption and a resolution passed by council.
Thank you, Kirk. Any questions for Kirk?
Chris?
Go ahead, Chris.
Another Chris. Through you, Reeve. Kirk, where is this?
Okay.
Right at the corner of London Road and Amberley, or what?
No, so if we travel west on 86 from Wingham towards Whitechurch,
Yeah.
there's a salvage yard down there on the south side where they can take appliances.
Okay, I gotcha.
That is the area just before that salvage yard on the left-hand side.
Are there any individuals that would not like it?
I haven't heard of any. And I think that property already has one, possibly a little west of the salvage yard now. The homeowners or the property owners have indicated to Chris of Top Outdoor that they have no problem with the proposed signs on the property.
Anyone else have any questions?
Reeve Bailey,
Yes.
Kirk, when you say there's billboards in agricultural areas, are you saying that there's billboards in North Huron's agricultural areas or just in general?
I have noticed them in North Huron, but I've also noticed them in other municipalities as well. I can't speak as to why this provision was put in the sign bylaw. It was already in place prior to my employment here. But I have seen them out there, Councillor Syke.
So I guess my question, or I guess my follow-up question would be, if we don't understand, I guess if you're not sure why the agricultural exemption is not allowed, and council's not sure why it's there, I guess my question would be: is there a possibility that this bylaw needs to be amended to remove this discussion about exemptions every time, because the question is, I guess my question is, has anybody else asked? I don't recall in the 8 or 6 years that I've been on council of any request for an exemption. So the question is these signs just being erected without council's blessing? And if that's the case, the bylaw doesn't do what it's just to do, or is there a reason why we need that in there? And I guess I'm leaving that to the agricultural people to tell me whether there is or isn't a reason. But my question ultimately becomes: does this bylaw need to be amended to satisfy the actual needs, and therefore not having this exemption to keep coming back to council every time somebody wants a discussion?
Certainly, I can maybe do some research on that with other municipalities as to the reason why it may be in there or why they do not have it in their sign bylaw. I've been here for north of 3 years now, and I've never had the request, nor have I seen any new ones go up since I've been in this area. So I really can't answer your questions there.
Go ahead, Fred. Yeah.
Yes, I'm in favor, sorry. I like the way it is set up right now so it can be questioned. You know, we're gonna end up looking like I-95 or something like that, or 75. Like, I would not want to live near one. There's one on the way to Listowel where it's it's a food one, and the owner beside it has grown trees in front of it, so you can hardly see it because he doesn't like it. Once they're there, they take root, and it's hard to get rid of them. So, you know, you really got to think, do you want them? You know, this company, Chris and Chris, are obviously going around. It becomes a business for them, and they charge rent or lease. You know, so, you know, do you want to see them? That's really the question. And I'm really grateful that that we have to go through this process as a starter.
I think we'll go back to the actual bylaw we're passing tonight, and we'll leave it in Kirk's hands to put together, because I'm sure Morris Turnbury probably would like the same information, something together for us and bring back at a later date. Is there any other questions on the actual bylaw we're passing tonight? Go ahead, Kevin.
I had a question through you to staff. Do we have any gain by allowing this signage to go up? It sounds like it's a business, a rental business. We'll be renting sign space to whoever will pay them. Do we recuperate anything as a township by allowing it, or it's just because we're just allowing it on private property, and they're the only ones that gain leasage on the use the sign?
Any idea, Kurt?
Well, I don't have any idea on recouping costs. All we are getting back is $52. That's what the permit fee will be for the sign permit. So $52 for that. And just to let council know that I've had another request as well for another one, very similar in nature, which would be coming back to the following council meeting.
Things are looking up. We'll be $100 richer. Kirk, you could maybe, when you're talking to other districts, find out if there is actually a municipal fee. Not that I'm sure we're not going to be too rushed. It's surprising to have two in a row, because I got to admit, like Trevor, I've been around for a while, and this is the first time I've ever heard of this too. So, having said all that, is there any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Anita, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Kirk, is there a complaints process in place, or is it just if you ask for the sign and it's okay, then you can put it up?
Yes, reviewing the sign bylaw, all they're asking for is a resolution to be passed by council to exempt the requirements of the sign bylaw and allow them to locate it in the agricultural zone. Now, assuming the one is right on a property line, the other is not. It's in a few meters from a natural environment zone, but still located in the AG1 zone. I'm not aware of a complaint process for this.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a great advertising opportunity for the businesses in town and maybe for things in town, what's going to happen or what's happening in town.
Absolutely. Okay, let's throw this one over to Carson. We have a mover and a seconder, I believe.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Chief Building Official dated June 15th, 2020 regarding a signed bylaw exemption request for information. And further, that Council grants an exemption to the Township sign bylaw regarding the location and construction of 2 billboard signs in an agricultural zone located at 39377 Amberley Road. So that'll be a recorded vote. So Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Henderson? Councillor Palmer?
No.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 6-1, with the no being Councillor Palmer.
Thank you kindly. 7.7 Child Department. There is no ASH reports tonight, although I would like to touch on this with Council's permission. The provincial government announced last week, I believe it was, within 2 days of, just came up, said 2 days later that we were going to open up the daycare centers. But we don't have any, they didn't give us any regulations or up-to-date regulations to do anything with it or how to go about it. We cannot open it back up the way it was. We all understand that there's going to be a lot less children. How would you decide whose children are going to be there and who's not? So right now we're not opening up the daycare. We're looking at different things. Not Vicky. Just went blank on her name. Help me out here, guys. Val, thank you. Sorry, Val.
No worries.
Thanks. But she's been working on this quite a bit because we started a while back to get ready for when things starting to open up. And I believe it's going to be a long time getting things, and I don't think we'll go back to a normal, to be honest with you, as we used to know it, not in the foreseeable future. But she has been working very hard on this, but there's just too many unanswered questions. And these are the children of our future. So until we get proper guidance from above, until we feel that we're able to take care of everything properly for the staff and the children, we are not opening up the daycare right now. So if anybody asks the counselor, not at this time, and Vicky can address this at a later date, but I just wanted to point that out for council, okay? So we'll move on to CAO 7.8.1, North Huron Economic Development Committee and Recovery, speaking of talking about things. Wayne, I'm going to ask for a mover first.
I'll move it.
Anita moves it. Seconder, please.
Trevor seconds.
Trevor seconds. Okay, Dwayne, it's your show.
Your Worship. So, as council is aware, through a series of provincial orders, the province closed a number of non-essential businesses, limited in their operations. And this, like most municipalities, has had negative impact on our economy. And so what we've been doing thus far in terms of supporting our local businesses, and when programs become available or announced by the federal provincial government, we've been communicating that out to the 2 business improvement associations as well as to the chair of economic development committee. So that's basically been the support that we've been providing to our local business community thus far. But as the Director of Recreation indicated, the province unveiled the 3-phase plan for the recovery, and we're currently in phase 2. And phase 2 opens up or enables a lot of businesses to open up, which is great news. So the Township's Emergency Operations Group, as indicated previously, we're meeting on a bi-weekly basis, and we felt it's now time that we have to put something more formal into place to support and assist our local businesses with their recovery efforts. So we looked at what other area municipalities are doing, more specifically South Huron, Goderich, and Blue Water. We looked at their task force and what they're doing. And as well, we've had some discussions with our business improvement associations as well as economic development chair. And we've got some feedback from those folks as well. And just at a high level, we decided, or the proposal is, we would like this group to be more action oriented, less about meetings and less about documentation. And the other key thing I believe is in terms of the South Huron and the Blue Water and the Goderich, in terms of, they're developing strategies and then they disband. What we're hearing is that there's a potential second wave for this COVID. So we're envisioning that the recovery is going to be much longer than, say 6 to 12 weeks. We're envisioning that we're going to need some sort of a framework or a system for 12 to 18 months. So we were kind of working on those principles. So as a group at the emergency operations, we got talking about what it might look like and what it could look like. And we got talking about who should be at the table. And what we quickly realized is, in fact, that we actually have all of these people sitting at the table now, which is being our North Huron Economic Development Committee. However, it was noted that there were some additional folks that we would like to see included at that table to assist through the recovery process. More specifically, a Community Futures Huron representative, a Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs representative. Huron Economic Development plays a vital role in economic development in the county. They have been involved with our Economic Development Committee sporadically and by invitation. And what we've done and what we like to do is have them to be a standing member, non-voting member of that particular group. And as well, a member of the Huron County Emergency Management Services. They've certainly been instrumental in bringing information and sharing information to assist in the decision-making process. So just in terms of what we're seeking tonight, is basically approval of an economic development recovery framework. The framework is proposing to expand the scope and the mandate of the Economic Development Committee to include economic recovery. And in recognition of the expanded role of this group, it's also suggested that the North Huron Economic Development Committee be renamed to the North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee. And as I've noted, it's recommended that the non-voting members of the committee be expanded to include those additional organizations that I mentioned. And in addition to that, with respect to the voting membership, one of the areas that was not represented or is not currently represented on that committee is industry. So we reached out more specifically to West Gas Industries and Allison Lateau. Allison has been involved in economic development at the municipal level, and she keenly accepted the invitation and would be quite interested in joining the committee as a voting member. So if council wishes to proceed in terms of appointing the Economic Development Committee and expanding the mandate to include recovery, it is recommended, in light of the fact that the province has now moved into stage 2. They moved from stage 1 to stage 2 within 3 weeks, just as a point of interest. So they're moving very quickly on the economic recovery. So on that basis, it's recommended that council consider this to be a time-sensitive matter to essentially establish or reestablish the committee, adopt the amended or expanded terms of reference. And in doing so, that will enable the committee and the group to start meeting and start having discussions in terms of what needs to be done or what we can do to support the recovery of our local businesses. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions? I'll talk a bit on it then, and maybe you'll have some questions after I'm done talking. So we have been meeting I guess you'd call it informally, with both BIA presidents, the industrial players, and everybody else involved. And we've got to the point where it's really working for us. We're sharing information. One says, I can't get this. 3 other people email them later and tell them where to get it. We are going to work together as a team, knowing fully well that Blythe has a different main street than Wingham, but we can still work together as a team. And we have been working together for, I don't know, maybe 2 months now. Dwayne, maybe 3 months. I've lost track of everything. I'm very happy with the way we're working together. Again, it's just amazing how everybody's pulling together and helping each other out. And I've got an idea, and I have a friend that can do that for you, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop this into the formal team, as I believe we're required by law. I'm not sure about that one, but I do know we're required by our society to do this so that we can get things up and rolling, so that we can help each and every small business out there try to help each other. And that's why we've had a few of the players like the Futures program, because right now the loans are giving out to the small businesses interest-free and some non-repayable, parts of it non-repayable. It's godsend to a small business owner. If any of you has been there as I have in that situation, this is a time that you're going to need help. And I'm going to reiterate it again. Everybody thinks right now you're just getting a little bit of a pop, and in 3 weeks we're all going back to the way it used to be. No, folks, it's not going to happen that way. I'm really afraid with all the riots and everything that's going on, you're going to see a mass problem in less than a month. And it's going to come back. So our small businesses need to continue to get help in our small industry and our large industry. So that's why we're all working together. I will not babble on anymore. Is there any questions or comments or concerns? Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, a lot of you won't like this, but I been thinking about it. I read all this information, and I fail to see how it is any different than what we have right now with the Economic Committee and the BIAs. They're already doing it. Well, they can do it. And I know individuals in the BIAs are helping other individuals with good ideas. And I think we should just let the committees meet, officially meet. And I am against more government, and that's all this is. It's just another layer of the governmental onion. Already, like the province tells us what to do, and then county gets involved, and that's fine. And then is it going to be the North Huron gets involved too? Like, how many times does that have to be duplicated? And this is how I feel. And whether you agree or not, I don't see it as a help, because we already have the committees that can do it, that can take care of business. That's I won't babble along, but that's how I feel. Yeah, maybe something.
I'll attempt to answer that. So yes, you're right. These groups have been meeting, and yes, we have been meeting together. You're absolutely right. So instead of trying to invent a whole new wheel, we all said, we are here now as the BIAs. We're here now as the economic development. We have everybody sitting at the table. We're all talking now. So we're just bringing it all together in an official form to say we're moving ahead together. You're absolutely right in what you said, except what I think maybe you didn't realize is what you said is these different groups are working together right now. Mm-hmm. We're not inventing a new one at all. These are all those groups getting together, adding on the players that were left out, like agriculture is now going to be part of it, because Anita is your representative on the Economic Development Committee meeting for agriculture. So we're pulling everybody to the table. So one BIA does this, another BIA does the same this, the Economic Development does the same this, and all these people. We're just pulled them all together, and we're going to do this together one time and move forward. That's what it's all about, okay? Anybody else want to speak to that or any questions? So is that okay, Chris? Did you?
I understand what you're saying, Reeve. And, I just see them doing it already. Oh, boy. And you want to keep this active till November, what, 2022? That seems pretty far in the future. And the name doesn't go well, and recovery. You know, to me, if I'm just looking at it, it sounds kind of negative to me. I know what it's meaning, but yeah, I don't know. I just didn't like it.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Reed Bailey.
Go ahead, Trevor.
So we have to understand that the Economic Development Committee today, pre-COVID-19, was trying to bring business to the municipality. That's their goal. That was their role, nothing more. Right now, the community doesn't need more businesses. We need to keep the ones we have. So part of it is the supporting of these groups today to ensure that the BIAs have all the information. Each of the BIAs are having the information at a single source. Yes, the BIAs are going to have their meetings outside of this. But, you know, in collaboration in the discussion is a prime example. And here's a prime example that just quickly. The BIAs originally had thought about advertising the lights out of this thing to bring people into the municipality or the businesses on themselves. The players of the businesses sent back messages to the BIA saying, stop. We don't want you to advertise, come to Wingham or come to Blythe and come to our store. Because we can't work within the guidelines, the framework that the province is putting in and try to have 100 people come to our store because we can't support it. So part of the discussion has been by having all these people at the table that this can be a municipal collaborative moving forward, as opposed to the BIA doing one thing, the Wingham BIA doing one thing, the Blythe BIA doing another, and the industry players who are not on the BIA. I'll tell you right now, Westcast and Brightspan and those larger type people, they're not on the BIAs. So you're not getting any information from them as it relates to economic development and what we could use or what we could do for them on these things. So, you know, I think we have to understand is we want this to be a collaborative discussion. The Economic Development Committee is going to be looking at this for the next term. It's not a next 6 weeks. We want this committee to be on the grounds doing work, not make the high and the spy political discussion and then they walk away and expect staff to do all the work. That is not the intention of this team. This team is going to take recommendations from themselves and push the work down to the BIAs and themselves to make it happen. These are make it happen people, not send it to the staff at North Huron and North Huron, good luck, hope you get it done. Because we've already told them, the staff of North Huron, we're already short-staffed as it is because of layoffs. We're not taking any additional work. So that's the part for me is I just wanted to clarify it's, yes, this work is being done, but their work is being done differently now than it was pre-COVID.
Thank you, Trevor. Anybody else like to go ahead, Paul?
Yeah, through you, Reeve. Like I noticed there, it says sporadically the Huron County people weren't in it. The economic people, they'll be definitely involved with this, though, right? Like
We have
Chris Watson's and them.
We have left the door open for them. Dave Clark, which heads up their emergency task force, is at all of our meetings. He requested to be part of this group because he told us in a meeting just like this is the first group he's been part of that there's action and not yapping going on all the time. So that's what we're about, as Trevor said. We're already getting recognition for it, Paul.
Good.
Anyone else? Not hearing any, I'll turn it right on over to Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry about that. I was just waiting for my screen to load. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the CAO dated June 15th, 2020 regarding the North Huron Economic Development Committee and Recovery, and further that Council renames the North Huron Economic Development Committee as the North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee, and further that Council approves the attached terms of reference for the North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee. And further, that Council adopts Bylaw 41-2020, being a bylaw to establish the North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee and adopt the approved terms of reference. And further, that Council deems the adoption of Bylaw Number 41-2020 to be a time-sensitive matter and grants an exemption to Section 19.1 of the Procedure Bylaw to allow Bylaw Number 41-2020 to be adopted at the June 15th, 2020 Council meeting. Further, that Council authorizes the North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee meetings to be conducted electronically during the COVID-19 declared state of emergency in accordance with the Township of North Huron Procedure Bylaw. And further, that Council amends Bylaw 25-2019, being the committee appointment bylaw, to reflect the voting members of the North Huron Economic Development and Recovery Committee as contained in the report. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
Councillor Palmer?
Okay.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 7-0.
Thank you, Carson. Correspondence, 8.1, the Wingham Ward Police Services Board OPP Detachment Commander Report for May. Do I have a mover for this one? Is there anyone? I think I heard Rick and I seen Paul. Thank you. Trevor, would you like to speak to this one?
Yes, Reeve. Just wanted to pass along that obviously the report is right in the heart of COVID-19. So obviously you can tell from the calls of service that the calls of service are significantly down from a year ago, which in light of, I guess in light of where we are at, I guess that's a positive in all aspects of where we are. One thing I did want to mention, there was also, and it's not in this report, but it was also mentioned in a press release that effectively June 20, correct me if I'm wrong, Dwayne, effectively June 22nd or 25th, I can't recall, the detachment area in Wingham on Bristol Terrace is effectively closed, and now they will be reporting, their reporting will be all done out of the new administration building in Clinton. So I can't recall if that's the 22nd or 25th based on that press release, but that was communicated via press release to us.
Through you, Your Worship, the 22nd.
Okay, so other than that, there has been some focused patrols in high risk areas, as you can see in the report. There has been some other concerns or issues raised to myself that have been addressed with the OPP as it relates to some residential complaints regarding crime activity and other things within the municipality in the Wingham area. So those have been passed along to the police, to the OPP. And I do want to thank them significantly for their, timing of when they get a response or a question from the residents, that they are following up and providing some feedback to myself if I've sent them that way or whatever. So, we are being told by the OPP, if you have a concern, no matter what the concern is, please call the 1-888 number. If it's not an emergency, obviously, if it's emergency, you call 911. But in the means of, if you have a complaint that is police oriented, feel free to contact the Huron OPP at that 1-800 number or 1-888 number, and they will be more than happy to follow up with your complaints. So other than that, is there any questions as it relates to the trends, or any questions that relates to the report that has been provided by the deputy or the detachment commander?
Trevor, I just like to follow up for some time now. George Finch, Mayor of South Huron, and myself have been talking a bit about after County Council about the problem of, if it's centralized in Clinton, what would be the reaction time to get to either Blue Water or his the far end of Central Huron. And also, I have the same concerns here. Not to say the job can't be done, but I do have concerns. We do both have concerns, especially because I believe we're helping the Bruce OPP too, I think, because they don't have a detachment at this point too close to, say, Teeswater and that. So unofficially, there is a little bit of conversations going back and forth to the two of us, between the two of us, and now our CAOs, just to see how this might pan out, and just to make sure that deliveries are properly done. And there will be some media coverage on that, of course.
Yeah, Reeve, the question that I have, and I've actually had some questions with the detachment commander, as well as I've had some questions with actual officers that we actually, that I happen to know. And really the concern is that shift change. That's really the question, is what happens at shift change. Because obviously everybody's coming out of Clinton, so shift change, they go to Clinton, they come back. So, that's ultimately the discussion. So, I don't know what the solution is. The detachment commander at the time didn't know what the solution was going to be. I think at the end of the day, they were really looking at the operation as a whole. And then as they work through this, the administration building, and see how it works, I think there's going to be some thoughts about whether this is the right idea or right approach. But, at this point, this is what they're going with, and this is what they've communicated. That is actually a directive from the province to close those branches. It's not it's an OPP directive, but it's been asked by the province in order to do that. So, part of it is going to be this discussion about what is the real way of how we should be worrying our OPP and our coverage, our police coverage during shift change. And if it's always known about when shift change is that's when crime going to change, because ultimately, the criminals they're not going to do it when there is not a shift change. They're going to do it potentially when there is a lower density of coverage. So I think they're working through these discussions as well. But I think any discussions that are being had by other municipalities have OPP are definitely going to be involved. And I think, especially when the new changes in the Police Services Board discussions and they're more of a wider Huron County led board, if that if that ever does come to fruition, I think you'll find that is a discussion that will begin even more.
Even then. Okay, thank you for that information. Anyone else for Trevor? Not hearing any. I believe this one needs a motion. I believe I have yes, I have movers. Trevor, Carson, I'm going to give it over to you again.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the OPP Detachment Commander Report, Wingham Ward, for the month of May for information purposes. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor Van Henderson?
Yes.
Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
In just a follow-up to that, I know there has, because the Police Services Board falls under the directive of council of not having meetings, I just wanted to relay it to Carson. We are required by the ministry to have 4 meetings or 3 meetings a year, correct, Carson?
Through you, your worship. So the requirement is to have at least 4 meetings per year. However, the legislation that allows us to meet electronically is the Municipal Act, and the board is mandated by the Police Services Act. So regardless, at this time, the province hasn't enabled police boards to meet electronically. Only committees of council or boards that operate under the Municipal Act.
Okay, so basically in saying that, that just means that if we can't meet because they haven't reached the order, then we can't default on the act, if that's the case. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council reports, a raise report. Just want to report that we're moving along with trying to open following provincial guidelines. But for a variety of reasons, some of the activities and services we would normally have open and would be using right now are not open. Some may not open. Some are not going to open, as the public heard tonight, and some may open in the fall. We have to be very mindful of the fact it's safety first, because they are warning us about a second wave. And Huron County has been very lucky in this one, but there's nothing to say we'd be this lucky in the next one after all the tourists have left the Lake Huron this fall. So North Huron is working as hard as we can. And I'd just like to point out that Lisa Thompson sent me an email saying that the provincial government had passed the okay for the funding we're asking for our new standpipe in Wingham, which I believe, and I forget, I think it's 90% or 80% of the cost. Having said that, by them doing that, they simply move it up to the federal level, because it's actually a federal grant that we're looking for. So we've sent off a request for Ben Lobb to support it. I haven't heard back yet. It's been about a week now. So we're really hopeful in the long run that the standpipe we may have some more saving grace here if we're lucky. The other thing I would like to point out that North Huron has hired Jamie McCarthy as Director of Public Works and Facilities. I won't go into great detail except today that she pretty well ticked off every one of the boxes when we had our conversations with her and she sent her resume in. She was great in her interviews, and we want to welcome Jamie aboard. And I'm sure Jamie's watching already, excited to get down here. And Jamie, you've got to know, and I will tell you when you get here, you have a great team to work with. They're all as good as Dwayne when you met Dwayne. So we are all looking forward to her taking the position. We're all going to miss Sean. And I hear he's not going to be too far away just in case we need him anyway. He's around the corner or something. But anyway, everybody, we have a new Director of Public Works, and there will be a press release on that a little later. So having said that, we're going to turn it over to council member reports, verbal, written updates on members who sit on boards or committees. Anybody want to speak? Not on that one. 9.3 is comments by members. Is there anybody that would like to comment on something we talked about or something that's bothered? I'm going to start with Chris, and then I'm going to go to Kevin.
I have a couple of things. First of all, through you, Reeve, Sean, I'm good for you that you're able to get the flower baskets hanging on the main streets. The towns look great. That was a big deal because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to even do them. So there's that. And the other one was these emergency numbers. I was very grateful because I experienced that a couple of weeks ago where I was desperate to get somebody. There was hydro wires across the road, and this had to be dealt with quickly, and I couldn't find the darn number on the website. I ended up finding somebody to call somebody, and that was silly because the somebody might not have been there. So I have the number, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you very much, Chris. Kevin, you're muted. Good.
Yeah, thank you, Trey Reeve. Just a question I have might be Kirk might be able to answer for me. It's more of a bylaw question. It's a concern that's come up in the Blythe ward. to businesses on Main Street. We have one incident where a business has been turned over to, or turned into a residence. And we just wondered if that required rezoning in Blythe, or is this just being done under the board? No one heard anything about it. Next thing you know, there's tricycles and sandboxes out in the sidewalk, or beside the sidewalk on Main Street, because there's people living in a restaurant that we used to have. I was just curious if there's a legal precedence there, or something that's just being done below board, or because it really changes the asset or the feeling of Main Street, or the idea of Main Street. If that's the case, then that can be done in every store we've got.
Kirk, are you there to answer that? Great, thank you.
Yes, certainly, Reed Billy. First, I'd ask for a complaint form to be submitted and signed, and then we'll start the process from there. But to give you a little bit of information prior to is, if it's on Main Street, it's most likely zone C4, which is your commercial downtown core. You are allowed to have a residential use in that building, and it's to be located in the rear of the main floor of the commercial and or upstairs on the second level. The commercial storefront is to remain commercial. And I think the measurement is the front 25 feet of that building would be your commercial use. And that use has to be established prior to the residential use being located in the rear portion.
Yeah, well, this building's only 16 feet deep, so.
That makes it tough.
Guess it doesn't qualify.
Yeah, no, you've answered my question for me. I didn't hear anything, anything changed for as far as zoning coming through the building. It was just the other storefronts were curious as to why there's now cars parked on the other side of the sidewalk and toys and stuff with access to the street. I was just curious, so I'll take you up on that suggestion, and we'll do through the proper channels.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, Reed Bailey, I just wanted to pass them on. So I did want to express some concern, and it's not a concern about what staff have provided. I'm more concerned about either the residents and their lack of disrespect to the fact is of picking up after themselves. We have an asset in our municipality that is a true value that I think some municipalities would love to have, and that is the community trail. I have witnessed a number of issues on the community trail in the sense that garbage is being left, dog excrement bags have just been left where they think there should be a garbage can, but there isn't one. So, people, they don't want to walk with them, so they don't want to take it home. So what's their best guess? They just drop it wherever the heck they want. And my concern is, if there were receptacles in places, and really this was more of a question for staff, and it's not a shot at the staff or at all. I just want to understand, was there refuge containers removed when COVID hit and they haven't been put back out in certain places on the trail or in the recreation facilities because the rec facilities haven't been used or shouldn't be used? And if that is the case, the concern I have is that, and I don't know whether they're residents or just people using the trail. I guess I should refrain from saying that, but either way, it is a complete disgrace that we have that type of stuff that's happening on our trail, and even in the municipality as a whole. If you have garbage take the garbage home. What is the purpose of dropping it off for somebody else to pick it up? And that is, in my mind, and again, I'm speaking for most people, or I'm not speaking for everybody, but I have young children. And, for me, I have a 4-year-old daughter who goes and looks at that stuff and thinks she can just drop stuff off wherever she wants. And she's can pick it up. She thinks, oh, I'll pick up the garbage. Well, I really don't want her picking up a dog bag because that just makes my life a whole lot difficult and that type of stuff. So I think ultimately my voice out is to the residents and the public to use the community trail and all facilities in the North Huron, downtown, whatever. Put your garbage in the receptacles, or if you don't have a receptacle, take the garbage home. It is your garbage. It's not town staff's responsibility to pick up your garbage. You are responsible. Do it and make our municipality healthier and safer and cleaner for everybody when it comes in. That's my comments, Reeve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to mention anything? There is one thing that I forgot, and that was a letter that came to me. I'd just like to touch on this too, because again, this is the great work of this council. For 3 years, there was a young lady that lost her husband. She's been trying to get a tree planted on around the trail of North Huron. I know Bob, I know her husband, socialized with them a lot through the years. Not friends, but just knew each other as we all know each other on this council. We passed that bylaw. We said you can put this and this here and that there. And she has stepped up to the plate, and she's going to put a memory tree for her husband. I want to thank Sean. I want to thank staff, but especially Sean, for putting together everything that it would take and making it so that 25 years from now, we'll still see that tree and still see that plaque. We just didn't say go throw it any place you want, put it anywhere you want, but it's all going to be scripted and properly done. So again, to the staff of North Huron and to the Council of North Huron, thank you very much. Our citizens are very happy when we can reach out to them and help them in any small way. And this I don't consider a small way. I think this is a great thing. Just all I was going to say on that. Go ahead, Kevin.
Through you, Reeve. This might be to Sean. Maybe you'll answer that. The tree that was planted or transplanted at the new bar. I'm curious, was that the memorial tree for John Black that was at the ESTC Center?
Through your worship, yes, that's the tree that was moved from the ESTC. And Reeve, if I may, regarding that memorial policy, just first and foremost, I think it would only be appropriate to say that this was definitely a multi-departmental undertaking, and Denise and Vicky put a ton of time into this into this one. That being said, I think we may be talking about it next week as well, because there are some questions regarding the structure of the policy itself, and there is a request for amendment. I don't know if it's the right time to talk about it tonight, but it might be coming up in a future meeting.
Thank you very kindly. The other one is the street naming too, and I'm just going to mention it because Matthew Dinning's mom and dad have put a request in to have a street named after their son who was lost in Afghanistan. And I just think it's great we do this kind of stuff. And I'm going to stop talking about it right now. Anybody else like to speak about anything? Not hearing anybody? We're going to go to, there's no notice of motions today. And we're going to go to bylaw number 40/2020. Do I have a mover?
Chris.
Chris and Kevin seconds. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that bylaw 40/2020, being a bylaw to appoint a director of public works and facilities for the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the reading clerk, and being posted in the bylaw book. So Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney? Deputy Reeve Syke?
Yes.
Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 7-0.
Thank you. 11.2 is bylaw number 41-2020. Do I have a mover and seconder?
Deputy Reeve
I'll move
moves.
that.
And I have Anita seconding, okay? You're ready, Carson? I'll give that one to you too.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that bylaw 41-2020, being a bylaw to establish an economic development and recovery committee as a committee of council for the Township of North Huron, and to authorize and adopt terms of reference for the Economic Development and Recovery Committee, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the reading clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Councillor Van Hitterson.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight. Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey. So that vote carries 7-0.
Thank you again. And finally, bylaw 11.3, bylaw number 42-2020. Do I have a mover? I have Paul. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick seconding. I will hand it over to you again, Carson, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that bylaw 42-2020, being a bylaw to authorize a site plan control agreement between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and Rutling Holdings Limited, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the reading clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. So Councillor McBurney. Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Now to 12, announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, July 6, 2020 at 6 p.m. through electronic participation unless notified otherwise. All committee and board meetings remain suspended until further notice, with the exception of the BIA, the Blythe BIA, and the Wingham BIA meetings, which will be held through electronics during the declared state of emergency. The Wingham BIA's next electronic meeting will be held on Thursday, June 18th, 2020 at 6:30. No other business being, I don't see any other business on there unless someone wants to speak up. Closed session tonight. We have no closed session tonight. Confirmatory bylaw. So I know Carson's only going to read it again, so I'm just going to ask for a mover and a seconder. I have Kevin and I have Paul moving and seconding, and I hand it back over to you again, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that bylaw 43-2020, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by the Council of the Township of North Huron at the June 15, 2020 meeting, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. So Deputy Reeve Sight. Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson. Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 7-0.
And when you're ready, Carson, I'm going to get a mover and seconder for adjournment. Do I have a mover? Everybody at once. Rick, thank you. Seconder. I have Kevin. Carson, final one for the night.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron agree that there being no further business before council, the meeting be hereby adjourned at 7:48 p.m. So Councillor Falconer.
That's from Sunny Blythe.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So the motion to adjourn carries 7-0.
Stay safe, everyone. We will talk another time. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.